Few countries bring together such dramatically different landscapes within a relatively small territory. Cape Verde is one of those rare places where continents and cultures meet. Volcanic landscapes, tropical beaches, and Portuguese colonial architecture are scattered across islands that captivate visitors with their extraordinary beauty. In today's video, you'll discover one of the most incredible places on our planet. Get ready to experience a culture that is rich, welcoming, and deeply shaped by the meeting of different peoples. Ponta do Sol, Santo Antão. Ponta do Sol is one of those places that seems to defy geography. At the northern tip of the island of Santo Antão, the town was built between towering volcanic mountains and the Atlantic Ocean, occupying a narrow strip of land where every foot of space carved from the rugged terrain came at a tremendous cost. For centuries, this small harbor served as one of the island's main gateways, and even today, it preserves a pace of life that seems untouched by the rush of the modern world. For a long time, I imagined Ponta do Sol was just another coastal village in Cape Verde. It took only a few minutes of walking through its streets to realize I had been completely mistaken. There is a quiet elegance in its colorful facades, historic balconies, and small squares overlooking the sea. The scenery is breathtaking, but it is the atmosphere that ultimately leaves the deepest impression. The town was established during the Portuguese colonial period, when Santo Antão was beginning to experience more extensive settlement. Its natural harbor turned the region into an important commercial hub, welcoming vessels loaded with agricultural products grown in the island's fertile valleys. Coffee, sugarcane, fruit, and other crops traveled through these streets before continuing on to other islands and eventually to Europe. Today, much of that commercial importance belongs to the past, especially after the construction of the harbor in Porto Novo, on the southern side of the island. Even so, walking through the old waterfront district offers a glimpse into the days when Ponta do Sol bustled with activity. The old pier still stands as a tangible reminder of that era, facing the waves of the Atlantic as though it were still waiting for the arrival of merchant ships. The town's location is truly extraordinary. Behind the houses rise volcanic mountains reaching well over 3,300 feet above sea level. Ahead, the Atlantic stretches uninterrupted all the way to the Americas. This combination makes Ponta do Sol feel as though it has been squeezed between two giants, rock and sea. Few towns convey so clearly the sense that people had to negotiate every bit of space with nature. Its narrow streets tell part of that story. Many were laid out when nearly all transportation was done on foot or with pack animals. The buildings have preserved a distinctly colonial character, with wooden doors, colorful windows, and low-rise structures that contrast with the massive stone walls created by the island's volcanic activity. Fogo Island. There is an island in Cape Verde where the ground still seems warm beneath your feet. I'm talking about Fogo, the island that was born around a volcano and learned how to live alongside it. Pico do Fogo dominates the entire landscape, rising to about 9,280 feet above sea level, making it the highest point in Cape Verde. From a distance, it appears almost motionless, like a permanent presence etched into the sky. Up close, however, the feeling changes. The black volcanic rock, the ash, the dry wind, and the small villages make you realize that nature is not simply part of the scenery here. It sets the rhythm of life. Many visitors arrive on Fogo with one simple goal: to see a volcano. But the island refuses to be defined by a single crater. There is São Felipe, with its historic mansions and balconies overlooking the Atlantic. To me, few islands have managed to transform a constant threat into such a strong sense of identity. Fogo's recent history carries a painful scar. On November 23, 2014, the volcano erupted once again after nearly 2 decades of dormancy. Lava flowed across the communities of Portela and Bangueira in Chão das Caldeiras. Homes, farmland, and community buildings were destroyed. Hundreds of people were forced to leave behind everything they had spent years building. Even so, what impresses me most is not only the destruction, it is the return. It is seeing people rebuild their lives upon dark volcanic rock. There is something nostalgic about the place, but it is far from lifeless. It is history that continues to breathe. Before we visit Cape Verde's most iconic city, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you'll be notified every time a new video is released. Cidade Velha. It was here, in 1462, that the Portuguese founded the first permanent European city in the tropics. Long before Cape Verde became an independent nation, this small stretch of Santiago Island already occupied a strategic position in the Atlantic. It was not merely a remote settlement, it was a vital link between continents. Originally known as Ribeira Grande, Cidade Velha grew rapidly because it stood directly along the maritime routes traveled by ships during the Age of Discovery. Vessels arriving from Europe stopped here before continuing toward the African coast or the Americas. Cargo was loaded, supplies were replenished, and information circulated among sailors from many different backgrounds. At the same time, the town also became one of the principal centers of the transatlantic slave trade, a painful chapter that profoundly shaped its history. I have always felt that truly understanding this place requires accepting its full complexity. There is pride in its remarkably preserved heritage, but there is also a responsibility to remember a past built upon immense human suffering. Ignoring either side would mean telling only half of the story. For a long time, Cidade Velha served as the capital of Cape Verde. The colony's most important administrative decisions were made here, while its harbor bustled with wealth and people arriving from many parts of the world. Its prosperity attracted merchants, navigators, and missionaries, transforming the town into one of the Atlantic's most significant centers during the 16th century. But that same prosperity also attracted dangerous interests. Wealth has always drawn the attention of those who lived by plunder. It was precisely to confront this threat that the royal fortress of São Felipe was built in the late 16th century on a hill overlooking the entire region. Whenever I look at this fortress, I imagine the sentries watching the horizon, alert for unfamiliar sails appearing in the distance. Its elevated position allowed approaching vessels to be spotted well in advance, giving defenders time to prepare before invaders could reach the harbor. Famous pirates sailed through the archipelago, and attacks on the former Ribeira Grande became part of its history. Descending from the fortress into the historic center, the atmosphere changes completely. Narrow streets, centuries-old churches, and stone buildings create a setting that seems to have traveled through time without losing its authenticity. In some sections, you can walk along virtually the same streets that were laid out hundreds of years ago. Another remarkable landmark is the Church of Our Lady of the Rosary, considered one of the oldest surviving colonial buildings in sub-Saharan Africa. Even after centuries, it continues to bear witness to the profound transformations of Cape Verdean society. Buracona, the Blue Eye, Sal Island. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a natural pool hidden among volcanic rocks. But all it takes is a single ray of sunlight passing through the water to understand why this place became known as the Blue Eye. On the northwestern coast of Sal Island, Buracona showcases one of Cape Verde's most photographed natural wonders. It was carved over thousands of years by the relentless power of Atlantic waves crashing against ancient lava flows. The result is a crystal-clear pool connected to the ocean through underground tunnels. At certain times of the day, sunlight enters the opening at just the right angle, creating an intense turquoise blue circle. I have always found it fascinating how such a relatively simple natural phenomenon can spark so much curiosity. There are no artificial effects hidden here. The brilliant blue glow appears thanks to the combination of the water's exceptional clarity, the depth of the cavity, and the position of the sun, usually around noon, when the light reaches its ideal angle. Fontainhas, Santo Antão. Fontainhas seems to have been placed where no village should possibly fit. Perched high on the steep slopes of Santo Antão, it balances between towering cliffs, rugged mountains, and constant winds. Whenever I look at its colorful houses, my first feeling is amazement. The village appears to cling to the mountainside as though it had been carved directly into the rock itself. All around it, deep valleys plunge dramatically toward the Atlantic Ocean. Few places in Cape Verde make such a powerful visual impression. Fontainhas lies near Ponta do Sol, in northern Santo Antão, one of the island's most dramatic regions. Getting there means traveling along a narrow road lined with sheer cliffs, sharp curves, and views that seem almost too vast to take in. Every foot of the journey reminds you that living here has always required resilience. There is no extra space, no easy terrain, and no effortless path. Even so, people built homes, cultivated small plots of land, and created a thriving community where the landscape itself seemed to say it could never happen. That is what impresses me most about Fontainhas. The village does not try to tame the mountain, it has learned to live with it. The brightly painted houses create a striking contrast against the grey and green slopes. Shades of blue, yellow, pink and white stand out as unmistakable signs of human presence within an immense landscape. From a distance, the village appears fragile. Up close, however, it reveals a quiet strength built patiently over generations. The streets are narrow and often steep, designed for slow walks and close conversations. Agriculture continues to play an important role, with small farms adapted to terraces and mountain slopes. On Santo Antão, every piece of arable land is precious. Fertile soil must be earned through hard work, patience, and generations of knowledge. Fontainhas has also become one of the island's best-known destinations for hikers exploring Santo Antão. Viana Desert. For a long time, I believed Cape Verde was defined only by the ocean, volcanic mountains, and small towns scattered among dry valleys. Then, I discovered a landscape unlike anything I expected. On the island of Boa Vista lies a field of dunes that seems disconnected from the African continent, even though its very existence is directly tied to it. The Viana Desert covers a relatively small area of about 2 square miles, yet its size becomes almost irrelevant once you see how completely it dominates the landscape. The dunes never remain still. They slowly shift as the trade winds cross the Atlantic, carrying incredibly fine sand from the Sahara Desert. Over thousands of years, those grains traveled hundreds of miles before finally settling on Boa Vista. Every gust of wind adds an almost imperceptible new layer, reshaping the landscape without anyone noticing. I find that idea fascinating because it reminds us that extraordinary landscapes can be built through processes that are almost invisible. Every morning, the surface takes on a new pattern, erasing the footprints of people, the tracks of animals, and even the tire marks left by authorized vehicles. There is one fascinating detail that many people are unaware of. Despite its name, the Viana Desert was not formed by the same climatic conditions as the Sahara. Instead, it serves as a vast natural deposit of sediment carried by African winds. Its pale, incredibly fine sand creates a striking contrast against the dark volcanic formations that surround the island. That combination makes the landscape seem even more improbable. I often wonder how many people realize that a small part of Africa continues its journey across the ocean every single day before finally reaching Cape Verde, almost unnoticed. Pedra de Lume Salt Pans, Sal Island. The first surprise is realizing that everything takes place inside the crater of an extinct volcano on Sal Island. Thousands of years ago, volcanic activity shaped this enormous depression, which was later filled with mineral-rich water. Constant evaporation caused by the island's dry climate concentrated extraordinary amounts of salt, creating one of Cape Verde's most important natural salt deposits. Today, anyone who passes through the tunnel carved into the rock to enter the crater encounters a landscape completely different from the one outside. I like to think that Pedra de Lume represents much of Cape Verde's economic history. For centuries, the salt extracted here was an extremely valuable resource, supplying ships and being exported to markets throughout the Atlantic. During the 19th century, production expanded significantly, with transportation systems and canals built to make harvesting the salt crystals more efficient. A small settlement grew around this industry, attracting workers who endured intense heat and demanding conditions. Although industrial salt production gradually lost its economic importance, its legacy remains visible in the old buildings, abandoned rail tracks, and preserved industrial structures. Every detail serves as a reminder that this remarkable place was not only a breathtaking landscape, but also a source of livelihood for countless families. I often wonder whether anyone at that time could have imagined that a former mining center would one day become one of Cape Verde's most fascinating destinations. Stepping into the water is an experience that is difficult to forget. The salt concentration is so high that your body floats almost effortlessly, creating a sensation remarkably similar to floating in the Dead Sea. Volcanic walls surround the lake on every side, creating an environment that feels completely separated from the rest of the island. I hope Cape Verde has exceeded your expectations. But before you leave, I invite you to watch another video we've selected especially for you. We'll be waiting for you.